Hey everyone, welcome back to Gambling Flow, your daily deep dive into the world of well gambling.
That's right.
I'm Russell Kane.
I'm Fiona Blake.
And today we're taking a look at gambling in China.
This should be interesting.
Now, it's a bit of a head scratcher, right? Because on the one hand, gambling is strictly prohibited in mainland China.
Absolutely. It's like officially a big no-no.
The government, the Ministry of Public Security, they're really serious about this.
Oh, yeah. We're talking administrative penalties, even criminal charges for those who break the rules.
But then you've got Macau, this glittering gambling paradise, raking in billions.
It's a real paradox, isn't it? You've got this hardline stance against gambling on the mainland.
Right.
They're even trying to crack down on online platforms that target Chinese citizens.
It's like a constant battle against these illegal operations.
And they're always popping up somewhere new.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a game of whack-a-mole.
Shut them down in the Philippines, and suddenly they're operating in Cambodia.
Exactly. And it really highlights the dangers of that unregulated gambling scene.
Oh, for sure. Scams, fraud, vulnerable individuals being exploited. It's a real problem.
And then you've got Macau, this shining exception.
This former Portuguese colony, now a special administrative region of China.
And it's thriving as a global gambling hub.
Millions of visitors, incredible revenue streams.
We're talking projected revenues of $27 billion this year.
Which dwarfs even Las Vegas.
Yeah, think about the Venetian Macau. It's twice the size of its counterpart in Vegas.
The biggest casino on the planet.
It's like they said, go big or go home, and they went, we're going big.
And it's not just about the spectacle. This revenue is the engine driving Macau's economy.
Seriously.
We're talking almost 50% of Macau's GDP fueled by gambling.
Wow.
And 80% of the government's tax revenue.
That's incredible. So what does that mean for the people living there?
Well, they enjoy almost non-existent taxes.
Nice.
And they even receive annual cash payments thanks to those gambling profits.
So they're basically living in a gambler's utopia.
At least on the surface.
Okay, there's always a catch.
Okay. Well, even in this gambling haven, Beijing's influence is very much present.
Makes sense.
They've been clamping down on illegal money exchanges, trying to control capital flight and limit cross-border gambling.
So they're trying to keep a tight rein on things.
They even went as far as arresting some of those junket promoters.
The folks who bring in the high rollers from mainland China.
Exactly. They act as middlemen facilitating those trips to Macau.
So Beijing's not messing around. They're sending a message.
It's a delicate balancing act, really.
Yeah, they're allowing this gambling giant to flourish, but they're also trying to mitigate the potential downsides.
It's a tightrope walk, for sure.
Now, speaking of balancing acts, we can't forget about the lottery.
Ah, yes. The one form of gambling that gets the official thumbs up in mainland China.
You've got the welfare lottery and the sports lottery.
Very strategically positioned as a way to raise funds for social welfare programs and construction projects.
It's like, hey, you're not gambling, you're contributing to the greater good.
Clever framing, right?
And it's been incredibly successful. Those lottery ticket sales have skyrocketed.
Especially with the introduction of those new scratch cards.
Billions in revenue.
It's like they've found a way to tap into that deeply ingrained cultural love of gambling.
While maintaining that sense of control.
Precisely. And speaking of cultural history, it's important to remember that gambling has deep roots in China.
Oh, absolutely. It goes back centuries.
Think about Keno, potentially invented to fund the Great Wall.
Wow.
Playing cards developed during the Tang Dynasty.
That's amazing.
The enduring popularity of mahjong.
It's woven into their cultural DNA.
It really is. And even Confucius, the great philosopher, had some interesting thoughts on gambling.
Oh, okay. This I gotta hear.
He said, and I quote, "People who gamble are better than those who have nothing to do."
Wow, that's a real head scratcher.
It is, isn't
Yeah.
it? It makes you think about how even Confucius might have acknowledged a place for gambling in society.
Maybe he saw it as a form of entertainment or even a potential economic stimulant.
It definitely adds another layer to this complex relationship China has with gambling.
So we've got this fascinating paradox on our hands.
Prohibition versus acceptance tradition versus modernity.
And a whole lot of questions about where things are headed.
It's a story that's still being written, folks.
And we're just starting to see the first chapters unfold.
Buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what's next for gambling in China.
Yeah, what does the future hold? Will they keep this balancing act going, or could we see a shift, towards a more open, regulated approach?
Well, it's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Literally.
They've already got their toes in the water with the lottery.
Right.
And that tightly controlled environment in Macau.
So could this be a sign of what's to come?
Maybe.
Could we see China, with its long history with gambling, actually emerge as like a global leader in the regulated gambling industry?
It's a possibility for sure.
It's a wild thought.
It wouldn't be completely out of character for them to think about their model of state capitalism.
Okay.
They allow free market economics, but under the watchful eye of the government.
So you're saying they could apply that same strategy to gambling?
Potentially create a carefully regulated environment, reap the economic benefits while minimizing the risks.
Okay, so imagine this China becomes a major player in the global gambling scene.
Not just Macau, but like a whole new approach to regulated gambling on the mainland.
How would that impact the global landscape? What would happen to places like Vegas or Singapore?
It would be a massive shift in the industry, a real game changer.
It's mind-boggling to even think about the ripple effects.
Absolutely, and think about the potential for technological innovation.
Oh, yeah.
New gambling platforms, the sheer scale of the market, it's huge.
And then you've got the social and cultural impact to consider.
How would this affect Chinese society? Would it lead to a surge in problem gambling?
Or would it be embraced as just a form of entertainment, like it is in many other parts of the world?
It's hard to say there are no easy answers.
It's a complex issue.
With potential benefits and risks.
On the one hand, regulated gambling could generate tax revenue,
Right.
jobs, boost tourism.
But on the other hand, you have concerns about addiction, crime, social problems.
It's a tightrope walk.
It would require careful planning, responsible regulation to mitigate those risks.
You know, it's interesting to think about the historical context here. Gambling's been a part of Chinese culture for centuries,
Right.
but it's always been this kind of taboo subject, pushed underground or confined to special zones like Macau.
It's like this hidden current running beneath the surface of Chinese society.
And now with the economic potential becoming so clear, it feels like that current is starting to break through,
Like China's wrestling with its own identity when it comes to gambling.
trying to reconcile tradition with their modern aspirations.
And the way they choose to navigate this tension will have big implications.
Not just for China, but for the whole world. It's a story that's still being written, full of twists and turns. We're just at the beginning.
It's a gamble in itself, trying to predict where it's all headed.
But one thing's for sure, it's going to be a fascinating journey to watch. It's a real cliffhanger, isn't it? The future of gambling in China, so much potential, so much uncertainty.
It's been quite the deep dive, hasn't it? We've covered a lot of ground here.
From those underground gambling dens to the glitz and glamour of Macau.
Strict prohibitions, state-sanctioned lotteries. It really shows how complicated this whole thing is.
Yeah, I'm walking away with more questions than answers.
That's how it often goes with these deep dives.
Will China fully embrace regulated gambling? Will they find that balance between tradition and their global ambitions?
I guess only time will tell.
But whatever happens, it's going to have a global impact.
Absolutely. The way China approaches gambling will send ripples throughout the world.
Will they become a major player in the industry? Or will they stick with this cautious approach, this dance between prohibition and acceptance?
It's a story worth following, that's for sure.
And for anyone who's interested in the world of gambling, this is something you definitely want to keep an eye on.
Oh yeah, it has the potential to shake things up in a big way.
You know, one thing that really struck me is the economic power of gambling.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, look at Macau. It's a prime example.
Gambling revenue has transformed that city.
And if China were to embrace regulated gambling on a larger scale, the impact could be even bigger.
It's mind-boggling to think about the potential revenue and economic growth.
But it's not just about the money, right?
No, of course not.
There are social and cultural implications to consider, too.
How would a more open approach to gambling affect Chinese society? Would it change people's attitudes towards risk and reward?
Would we see an increase in problem gambling? These are all important questions.
It's crucial to have a balanced perspective, weigh the benefits against the risks.
And it all comes back to regulation.
If China does move towards a more regulated approach, they'll need to implement safeguards to protect people and prevent those negative social consequences.
It's a delicate balancing act for sure.
But one thing's for sure, the story of gambling in China is far from over.
It's a story that's still being written. A story with the potential to shape the future of the entire global gambling industry.
So what do you think, listeners? What does the future hold for gambling in China?
Will they embrace it fully or continue to tread cautiously?
Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspectives.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the fascinating world of gambling in China.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you all.
As always, we want to thank you, our amazing listeners, for tuning into Gambling Flow, your daily dose of gambling insights, analysis, and speculation.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of gambling.
I'm Russell Kane.
I'm Fiona Blake.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share this episode with your fellow gambling enthusiasts.
Until next time, happy gambling, everyone.